Legacy overhead. That's what he called me. I was halfway through updating a compliance audit sheet when the video feed flickered to life. And there he was, Matt. Let's be generous and say he was 30. Probably the type who thought using Synergy in bed was cutting edge, and that Excel macros were wizardry. The CFO introduced him as the efficiency consultant, which in corporate speak really means smiling hatchet man. Sun-kissed skin, perfect teeth, haircut like he Googled alpha male fade. Hi everyone, he said, flashing the kind of smirk reserved for guys who still do keg stands at weddings. I'm here to streamline operations and remove redundant processes. His gaze scanned the room, and me, like he was deciding which vintage chair to toss first. I didn't flinch. I just hit save on the folder where I keep every licensing doc, every federal renewal timestamp, every internal compliance chain linked to my name, labeled it church pancake recipes, and backed it up to a private drive. Dana Miller wasn't going out like some rookie. By lunch, I caught him in the break room, joking with two junior analysts about phasing out boomer infrastructure. I'm 42, not a boomer, but in Matt's world, if you don't TikTok your workflow, you're obsolete. Then came the open floor huddle. Everyone standing around like it was some ritual sacrifice of common sense. Matt fired up a slide deck packed with buzzwords: agile compliance ecosystem, decentralized accountability hubs. 3 interns nodded like they were witnessing the second coming of Elon Musk. Some team members, especially those with legacy responsibilities, will be reassessed to ensure alignment with our lean strategy, he said. Then his eyes locked on mine. We appreciate your historical contributions, Dana. Historical, as if I were some sarcophagus buried in HR's basement. I didn't respond, just smiled. The kind of smile you wear when someone steps into a bear trap you've been camouflaging for a decade. Quick pause before we continue. If you're listening and haven't subscribed yet, do a soul a favor. Trying to hit 10,000 subscribers so I can finally buy a chair without a missing wheel. Seriously, 95% of you listen without tapping that button. One click and you'll make this girl genuinely proud. Back to the chaos. That night, I stayed late, not because I had to, but because I wanted to watch the system breathe like a mother checking on her kids before CPS shows up. I triple-checked my credentials across 3 federal platforms: active certifications, renewal controls, licensing pins, audit clearance, all still tied to my name. I made sure every timestamp lined up perfectly. Then I pulled out my contract clause, the one everyone skips. Section 7C. It stated that if termination wasn't voluntary, all company-covered licensing fees and regulatory certifications would instantly be nullified and all credentials officially revoked within 48 hours. Nobody noticed when I walked out of the building, but I caught Matt's gaze that morning, sharp, predatory, like a lion sizing up a cow, not realizing the cow had predator drones at its disposal. Ever watch someone confuse a fuse with a shoelace? You will. By the following Tuesday, Matt had taped a sign above the copier. Compliance is not equal to complacency. Comic Sans font. Then the real circus began. Everyone, yes, every single person, was told they had to re-interview for their upgraded roles. It was spun as a team-building exercise, a chance to show gratitude for pitching for the exact same titles printed on our benefits cards. People shuffled into conference rooms like kids headed to the principal's office. The newer hires came out beaming, whispering how Matt really sees them, like he's injecting fresh energy. I wanted to remind them that kind of fresh air usually comes from a busted sewer. When it was my turn, I didn't bring a resume. I brought nothing but quiet. Matt barely lifted his eyes from the laptop. Dana, you've been here a while. 10 years, I said, calm as ice in a snowstorm. Right. Institutional knowledge. We value that. His fingers tapped keys, probably typing Fire Dinosaur into Slack, and pulled up a half-baked org chart. He pointed to a box labeled Regulatory Stewardship. My name crossed out. Below it, open, ready to be reassigned. Then he clicked Q3, Renewal Delegation. I spotted the file, Q3 License Ruth Plan V1. The comment read, "Can this be transferred downstream?" In Matt speak, downstream meant dumping it on someone too inexperienced to spell OSHA. I smiled, kept my face neutral, but internally, a siren was blaring. Back at my desk, I opened the database I'd built from scratch in 2016, the one tracking every compliance certificate, its expiration, the governing body, and signature authority. 43 items, 43 licenses, 43 threads of red tape, all tangled into one tight corporate noose directly tied to me. I exported a fresh copy, encrypted it, zipped it, renamed it employee birthday cake list, and sent it to a private account. Then I wiped the originals. Call me paranoid, but I've seen what happens when amateurs play with matches and call it innovation. Later that afternoon, Matt handed my inspection prep to a marketing intern who thought FDA stood for food design aesthetic. No joke. She asked if that meant redesigning lunchroom posters. Meanwhile, I was relegated to reorganizing the janitorial supply closet. He said it would keep me in the loop at a foundational level. Foundational like mold. I asked politely if I still had admin access to our licensing dashboard. Matt blinked like I just spoke in Aramaic. Oh, I think we routed that to Chloe last week. You don't really need it, right? Chloe had just learned what a PDF was. I didn't argue. I nodded, walked down the hall to a terminal, and revoked her access from the shadow admin panel I'd never told a soul about. If I was leaving the ship, I wasn't leaving the map behind. Later, I walked past Matt's glass office. He was laughing on a call, something about scrubbing out the old wood. He didn't notice me watching, but I did. The fuse was shorter now. Smoke lingered in the room. The first time I heard them laughing, I let it slide. It was 3 junior analysts, fresh from college, still full of borrowed confidence, hovering over a printout of my old compliance flowchart like it was some ancient cave painting. This thing uses color codes like it's straight out of a Crayola set, one muttered. Another chimed in. She even timestamps everything by hand. Does she even know automation exists? They clustered near the break room like a pack of self-important poodles clutching cold brew and tossing around buzzwords, agile iteration, machine learning integration, as if saying them could stop a federal audit. I walked past, head held high, though my spine was on fire. By Wednesday, I was locked out of 3 internal dashboards, 2 of which I'd built myself. No warning, no access request, just a red 4003 screen and a pop-up saying, "Contact your system administrator." Spoiler alert, I was, or at least had been, the system administrator. I emailed. No answer. Tried HR. Their voicemail was colder than January in Detroit. After 4 attempts, I finally reached a real person. Sorry, Dana. All HR requests now go through your departmental manager. That's Matt. Yes, that Matt. Like they were announcing the second coming, but with more hair gel and less divine intervention. I didn't reply. Just hung up and stared at my monitor. Empty, glowing, unhelpful. I'd been cut off from every functional interface in under a week. No explanation, just streamlining. Matt had that particular MBA cunning. Not enough skill to create, just enough to dismantle, hiding behind policy updates and reorg memos. He'd been slipping tiny grenades into his weekly leadership updates, legacy processes under review, potential staffing overlaps, redundant certification management identified. The last one was cute, as if a federally mandated authority signature tied to my biometric ID could really be redundant. I'd become a walking paradox, officially on the payroll, yet strategically erased. So I booked a 10-minute slot at a quiet notary above a nail salon on Monroe Avenue. No fanfare, just me, a stiff chair, and a form titled voluntary relinquishment of licensing authority. I didn't sign it yet, just notarized the option. Safety pin tucked into my coat pocket, just in case things went sideways. Afterward, I walked back to the office with a peppermint latte and the deadest smile imaginable. Matt passed me in the hall. "Hope you're feeling more aligned this week," he said. I nodded, quietly tying up loose ends. He smiled, the kind of corporate snake smile you'd find next to Crush It and a scented candle in a Barnes and Noble. What he didn't know was that every loose end I tied had a fuse. And I had the match. It happened on a Monday. Because of course it did. The kind of Monday where the office air smells like microwave plastic and everyone pretends they enjoy their jobs just enough to survive another week. We were all gathered for Matt's new weekly momentum sync, basically a TED Talk for sociopaths. He stood at the front of the open floor bullpen in a tight blue blazer, palms out like he was calming a herd of sheep. Let's start with some candor, he said. That's always the giveaway when someone's about to gut you in public. Candor. We've been doing a lot of reflection over the last few weeks, he went on, pacing like he was selling timeshares in hell. While tradition has value, stagnation is a threat. He stopped right behind my chair. I didn't turn around, and unfortunately, he spoke loud and clear. Certain legacy roles simply didn't fit with our forward momentum anymore. People shifted in their seats. Some stared at the floor. A few glanced at me. One kid forced a smile, pretending this was normal, like we were just watching someone lose a parking spot, not their entire livelihood. Then came the final blow. Effective immediately, Matt declared, Dana Miller's position has been phased out. No warning, no meeting, no private conversation, just a sentence suspended in the air like a bullet. I stood up, not because I was rattled, but because my legs were too steady for the urge they had to kick him through the wall. HR, two of them, both young, both avoiding my gaze, approached holding a glossy folder like it was sacred. I took it, flipped it open, turned to the termination page. No severance, just legal cover and a line to sign. I pulled a pen from my own bag and signed in one smooth stroke, then said, I'll need a printed copy. Matt blinked. It's all digital, he said. Printed. HR hesitated. I stared. For minutes later, I walked out of that office with a paper copy, a stapled receipt, and the serenity of someone who knew exactly what she'd just done. See, when I signed that form, Section 7C of my contract triggered a hidden clause across 3 federal databases, an invisible tripwire. Every active certification funded by the company, including mine, was instantly queued for auto-revocation. Not expired, not suspended, completely nullified. At 7:13 p.m. that night, my phone pinged with a confirmation email. Your authority over licenses hashtag CN8835 to 44, FD2210 to 98, and hashtag MDR5081 to 02 has been formally relinquished. Entities dependent on these licenses will be non-compliant within 24 hours unless reauthorized by a certified replacement. I didn't forward it, screenshot it, or even reply. I just sat in my apartment, sipped Box Merlot, watched reruns of The Golden Girls, while digital chaos quietly crept around Matt's precious forward momentum, and I slept like a goddamn baby. Wednesday morning began quietly, then with an expensive box of nothing. At 9:04 a.m., procurement tried to confirm a shipment of medical-grade filtration components for a biotech client. Components you don't even touch without 3 signatures and a biohazard stamp. The vendor replied, cannot fulfill shipment. Receiving entity listed as inactive. License CN 8835 to 44 expired. Contact listed certifying officer. Guess who that was? 10 minutes later, anomalies started piling up. Logins failed. API calls choked. A scheduled data sync to the FDA's audit portal returned a rejection code. Invalid license holder. That same hour, our internal license dashboard, once as pristine as a freshly mowed lawn, lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. Red alerts, inactive flags, orphaned credentials everywhere. Matt, ever the smooth-talking diplomat, strolled into the operations pod with a to-go cup from some downtown cafe and said, we'll just update the contact info. One of the compliance analysts, a poor kid named Renee, tried to explain, Sir, contact updates require certification reauthorization. Dana was the certifying officer legally. Matt blinked. Just do it anyway. She was the only officer with proper reauthorization rights across every active vertical. No one else was registered with the Federal Compliance Board. And re-registration? That dragged on for weeks. Silence followed. Not the awkward kind, the lethal kind. Like watching someone realize the iceberg isn't budging. Matt rubbed his temples and muttered, why didn't anyone tell me this sooner? Renee, barely old enough to rent a car, said, Dana already warned everyone. Meanwhile, I was at home in sweatpants, munching on off-brand Cheerios and reading the full thread from an anonymous email chain that a former colleague had quietly BCC'd me on. Someone even attached a screenshot of Matt's Slack message to legal. Anyone know how to override a license expiry tag in the dashboard thingy? Thingy called it a thingy. That dashboard had been my pride for 5 years. I built it to lock down tighter than Fort Knox if certain revocation events triggered. It wasn't bureaucracy, it was precise. If anyone without the right credentials tried to access a certification, it blacklisted their IP and automatically logged the intrusion to internal audits, which it promptly did that afternoon after Matt tried to brute force access. By lunchtime, Char was getting frantic pings from upper management. Can we get Dana back? Does her NDA block communication? Who approved this? Nobody responded, because the only person who could have bigger questions, like whether she wanted soup or wings for lunch. Spoiler, I went with both. That evening, I opened LinkedIn and checked the old company page, still proudly boasting federal certification across all operations. Almost felt bad. Almost. Instead, I grinned, knowing that by Thursday, that little lie would cost them far more than pride. The seeds were planted and the vines were tightening. Friday morning arrived with sirens. No one heard them, just the quiet ping of a calendar alert and the gut thud of panic hitting Matt's soy latte-filled stomach. FDA randomized site inspection, 10 a.m. legit. Random, yes, but within the window Dana had always quietly mapped, annually, color-coded, spreadsheet, cross-referenced with vendor contracts, renewal cycles, even moon phases if needed. The auditors didn't mess around. They arrived with clipboards and the moral authority of IRS agents in Kevlar. By 9:22, the front desk called compliance, 3 inspectors here, asking for the license holder. Silence. Panic silence. Longer silence. Because there wasn't one. Matt, now visibly drenched through his navy Banana Republic blazer, sprinted to the ops wing and barked at legal. Can we reinstate Dana's credentials? A junior associate, pale and desperate, Googled the license reinstatement process like it was a step-by-step guide for baking banana bread. Meanwhile, Matt tried to log into the Federal Credentialing Board's portal using Dana's old account. Access denied. He attempted a password reset. User not found. Frustrated, he called the regulatory board's help desk. After being bounced around 3 times, someone finally spoke clearly. Dana Miller had voluntarily surrendered her license. Her ID was removed from the registry. Reinstatement would require full recertification, which typically takes 4 to 6 weeks. Matt stared at the speakerphone as if it had just slapped him. He turned to HR. What clause did she use to give up her credentials? They rifled through her termination files, perplexed. We just processed the usual exit paperwork. I don't know anything about credentials. Someone from audit piped up. Wait, didn't she have a clause in her employment contract? At that moment, the room collectively remembered. Dana Miller wasn't some washed-up compliance grandma. She was the linchpin, and they'd yanked her out like a wisdom tooth hooked too deep. Meanwhile, across town, Dana's phone buzzed. It was Liz from documentation. Once a decent person, kind, she used to bake cookies for audit week and sneak post-it doodles onto Dana's monitor back when life made sense. Liz's voice wavered. Did you do this? Dana stirred her coffee, gazed blankly out the window, then smiled. No, she said calmly. You did click. She didn't slam the phone down. She didn't scream. That would have been giving them too much credit. This wasn't revenge. This was math. 1 + 1 equals. You fired the wrong person. Auditors were now sitting in the lobby. Legally, the company couldn't allow them into secured areas without a licensed compliance officer present, meaning the audit couldn't proceed, and every vendor and client, depending on certified compliance for active projects, would technically breach contract in about 4 hours. And Dana? She was getting her nails done. Midnight burgundy gel finish. Not out of necessity, because real power doesn't shout. It just walks away. Monday, 8:37 a.m. The building reeked of stale coffee, dried sweat, and the quiet shame of a company realizing it had just stepped on its own oxygen hose. That's when he walked in. Gregory T. Winslow, CEO. Skin glowing like an overcooked rotisserie chicken, silk shirt still creased from whatever Monaco resort he'd just floated back from. A man radiating wealth, sunscreen, and utter oblivion. He strolled through the glass atrium like a Roman emperor returning from battle, waving at receptionists, shooting finger guns at junior VPs. Morning, folks. Hope you didn't set the place on fire while I was gone. Silence. By the time he reached the executive floor, he already had 3 urgent license compliance emails waiting and a voicemail from legal ending with the ominous words, "Non-compliance disaster." At 9:02 a.m., he stormed into the operations room, bracing for a little chaos. Instead, he walked straight into a catastrophe. Operations frozen. Vendor shipments stopped cold. Inspections failed. Certifications invalid. Clients furious. Revenue chart flatlined. He spun to face the room full of exhausted managers, jaw tight. Who's handling this? All eyes flicked to Matt. Suddenly, he didn't look like a visionary. He looked like a middle schooler who just dumped glitter glue all over the gym floor. Gregory pulled up Dana's termination paperwork on the wall monitor. He read in silence, scrolled some more. Finally, he spoke quietly at first, as if the words themselves were unbelievable. "You fired the license holder." Matt opened his mouth, closed it. Gregory's tone didn't rise, it dropped. "Fired the person with sole federal licensing authority across every department." Matt stammered. "Her responsibilities were redundant," he said. Gregory laughed, not a funny laugh, more like a "I can't believe my child sold the car for crypto" laugh. He pointed at the screen. "Her name is on every regulatory document, every active license, every renewal, every legal compliance chain that keeps this company alive." He flipped open a manila folder legal had rushed in with. "Here are our top 5 suspended vendors. All contracts frozen due to expired searches. And here," he tossed a paper on the table like a dealer in Vegas, "Dana Miller is listed on every single one." Gregory turned to the room. "And you let some kid who still writes in buzzword nonsense fire her?" Matt tried one last Hail Mary. "I thought we could reassign it. It said we could just update contact info. It's a federal license, not some email alias." Gregory thundered. Silence. He grabbed his phone, looked up Dana's contact. Nothing. HR piped up. "We tried reaching her. She's unresponsive." Gregory exhaled, sat down, rubbed his temples like the sunburn had seeped behind his eyes. "Then get her back," Matt coughed. "She might not want to come back." Gregory stared at him like he was an annoying bug crawling across a leather loafer. "Oh, she'll come back," he said. "We'll pay. We'll name a wing after her if we have to." But deep down, even he knew the truth. The woman they had discarded like spoiled leftovers now held the keys to their entire damn empire. And she wasn't waiting at their gate anymore. She had built her own fortress, and inside every blueprint they were scrambling to reclaim, her name was still etched in permanent ink. Justice didn't shout. It simply watched the guilty bleed out over their own spreadsheets. By noon, her inbox was packed. 6 high-priority messages from Winslow Enterprises comm and a voicemail from an assistant named Trevor, who sounded like he hadn't slept since Thursday and might be contemplating selling a kidney for leverage. The subject line on the last email, "Urgent, return requested by CEO directive." Dana didn't rush to open it. She finished her late breakfast, 2 eggs over medium on sourdough toast, and savored the smug silence of a woman whose enemies were now stuck in fluorescent-lit meetings while she lounged in the gentle hum of her home espresso machine. Across the city, Gregory Winslow paced his executive suite like a lion trapped in customer service. Matt was now Associate Project Liaison, Level 2, which in corporate speak meant, sit down, shut up, and don't touch anything that requires a password. His standing desk had been replaced with a wobbly hand-me-down, his monitor downgraded to a tiny 19-inch square. The only thing agile about Matt these days was how quickly he got thrown under the bus. Within hours, Gregory had legal draft an offer to Dana. Consulting role, effective immediately. 6-month minimum term contract, reduced salary, but generous performance bonuses. And of course, a full gag order. No social media, no interviews, no regulator comments, total silence. The offer arrived in digital gold ribbon, accompanied by a groveling note. "Dana, we recognize the critical impact of your previous contributions. Please consider this opportunity to help us restore operational integrity. We are prepared to be flexible. Let's rebuild together." Dana reread it twice. No apology. No acknowledgement of their mistakes. Just veiled desperation dressed up in HR politeness. She composed her reply. Subject: Return requested by CEO Directive Gregory. Gregory, I appreciate the offer. Truly. Unfortunately, I don't return to burn buildings, especially the ones where I was thrown into the fire for trying to streamline them. As requested, please find attached a copy of my signed termination clause, Section 7C. Highlighted for clarity, formal confirmation of license revocation from the National Registry Board, and a screenshot of your company's certification dashboard captured 72 hours after termination. You'll notice my name still appears, grayed out, unchangeable. Wishing you compliance and clarity. Dana Miller. No dramatics, no threats, no negotiations, just the facts. She hit send and exhaled, not like a woman grieving a lost job, but like someone closing a door she'd built, installed, and locked from the outside. Gregory read the email in silence. He didn't forward it, didn't reply. He just leaned back, eyes fixed on that grayed-out dashboard screenshot, and for the first time since leaving his yacht, he realized they hadn't merely fired an employee. They'd excommunicated the one person who actually understood the system. And Dana? She wasn't praying anymore. 3 weeks later, LinkedIn nearly erupted. There she was, Dana Miller. Hair slightly lighter, smile a little sharper, dressed in business black, like someone who came to claim what was hers. New title: Director of Compliance Strategies at Biocore. The post was brief. No hashtags, no humble brags, just gratitude for joining a team where integrity wasn't an afterthought. Beneath it, 2 lines of polite fire. Stratex Biocore secures Omega Med and Viarc contracts, citing continuous compliance confidence as the deciding factor. Those were the crown jewels, 2 of the biggest clients her former company had flaunted on every earnings call. Now, they packed up and left after learning their certification backlog faced an unknown reactivation window. Inside Stratex, no hard sell was necessary. Dana carried the licensing blueprint in her head and an industry reputation that couldn't be faked. The fact that her name had once guaranteed multi-million-dollar vendor deals was enough to tip the scales. Meanwhile, back at her old stomping ground, still stuck. The dashboard never lit up green. License appeals got tangled in red tape. Legal fines poured in day after day, some automated, others hand-delivered like divine wrath in an envelope. Vendors pulled out. Clients freaked. The office holiday party was axed because of budget cuts. And Matt? He didn't even get a proper farewell cake. Just a 3-minute Zoom call and a transition plan that read more like an obituary notice. 1 week, he was barking orders across the open office floor. The next, he was polishing his resume with vague titles like freelance strategist. Meanwhile, Dana had scored her own corner office. Glass walls, espresso machine, a chair that didn't squeak when she shifted. Every morning, she watched the alert pings from industry feeds as if checking the weather for storms she'd already flown past. Ping, then another. Her old company flagged noncompliance. License status pending. Audit failures under appeal. She sipped her coffee, Colombian black, with a dash of smug. Leaning back, she radiated calm, perfectly centered. Above her desk, pinned to her monitor with a blue pushpin, was a single yellow sticky note. No signature, no emoji, just 5 precise words, written in steady block-free letters, in case they ever forget I was the license. Thanks for sticking around, office survivors. Subscribe for more drama, more switch flipping, and let's make your old coworkers sweat.